Hey folks, today we're going to look at the question of, are there gods in paper computer games? This is sort of an interesting question that has never really been addressed in any video. We're going to go through paper computer games made by anyone in the community. We're going to look at when there are things that seem to be gods. We're going to look at whether they really are gods and whether they, do exist in the PCG universe. I mean, sometimes it might be just that, we find some tribe worshiping a god, but it could turn out that that god doesn't really exist. It might just be, like an alien posing as a god, for example. We're going to figure out which ones of these gods do exist, don't exist, and the ones that we just don't know if they exist or not. We are going to sort it all out, and we're going to figure out if any of them actually created the PCG universe, or even the PCG multiverse as a whole. Now look folks, obviously here in the real world we all have our own beliefs about gods, but for the sake of this video, let's try and put that aside as much as possible because we are not talking about the real world. What does exist in the real world might not exist in the PCG universe, and conversely, things that don't exist in the real world might exist in the PCG universe. So we shouldn't assume that our beliefs about the real world also apply to the PCG universe. We shouldn't make an assumption about the PCG universe. Let's be detectives. Let's figure out which gods do and don't exist in the PCG universe, and hopefully it'll be a fun video. Let's do this. And by the way, we're not including any gods from other video games in this. So for example, if there's a paper computer game about God of War and you're playing as Kratos, who's the new God of War, then yeah, that doesn't count because he's from another video game franchise. We're only focusing on like the PCG universe and multiverse itself, so basically original creations. Let's do this. There aren't really that many clear examples of gods in paper computer games. That could be just because, there aren't really that many places for them. When you're playing a paper computer game, you're just playing as a regular person, and there aren't that many places to put gods. Of course, PCGs can be about anything, so there's no reason you couldn't make one about gods. But some in the PCG community have speculated that Zuvak might be a god himself. That's because Zuvak seems to show up in all sorts of different places, locations, and he has many different forms. There's all sorts of different versions of Zuvak, and you can see that most recently in Zuvak the trading card game, though those versions might not actually exist. But Salman the Fish PCG made a really good video on this where he breaks down all the evidence as to whether Zuvak might be a god, and at the end he comes to this conclusion, which I think is a really good, logical conclusion.
I believe that the sole reason Zuvak can appear in so many different universes is because all the universes are in one multiverse. There are actually multiple occasions where other PCG characters skip universes. One good example is the fat guy. If you would call Zuvak a god, then wouldn't every other PCG character be a god? I say this because all PCG characters are and can be put into other universes. Maybe he really wasn't anything special after all, but he still is and always will be the Zuvak we all know and love.
So it's probably safe to put Zuvak in the not a god category. Now the next on our list is Tutorial Bot, and this one is a little bit different because this is not speculation. Tutorial Bot's final form in the PCG Tutorial Bot's past, spoilers you guys, is actually Godbot. That is Tutorial Bot's true name. He is called Godbot, and when the Godbot mode is activated, his full power is revealed. He has godlike power. He can't be stopped by conventional means.
That is
and at the end of the game, the only way to defeat Godbot is by convincing him to remember that he's your friend. You know, that part of him is in there. So during this whole time, we see him exhibit extremely powerful telekinetic abilities and powers. We don't really know the full extent of his powers. Apparently, Tutorialbot was made from an ancient advanced device which was fought over by the Collector and Malfoy. The Collector finally got it and made it into a robot by combining it with a box. That's the origin of Tutorialbot. So, is he an actual god? Well, it doesn't seem like he is. It just seems like he's an ancient and very powerful piece of technology with godlike powers. Certainly he's a being, certainly he's powerful, and he has godlike powers, but what really defines a god?
And what is the measure of a god, Garrick? Is it the scope of their power or how they choose to wield that power?
The answer isn't really clear-cut, so I don't want to necessarily say Tutorialbot/Godbot isn't a god, because it's not that invalid to say a being with that much power, you know, maybe it could be considered some sort of a god. Maybe not a full god, maybe a demigod, maybe a half god. I don't know, but maybe I'll put it in the sort of category. In Pierre's classic PCG Genesis, which by the way is now available on the PCG shop, link in the description, throughout the Basilica of Heaven you can find statues to all of the Greek gods: Zeus, Hades, Apollo. But see, the thing is, we don't know if these gods actually ever existed in the PCG universe. These could just be statues. I mean, in the real world, there are statues of Zeus and, you know, all the Greek gods that exist. That doesn't mean the Greek gods really existed in real life. So, well, this is going to have to go in the we don't know category. And we later find out that these statues were crafted by Castidas. Apparently, they were all built in tribute to the one god. So, probably she never believed in them as gods. She might have just built them as tributes to his glory in some way. Maybe they're aspects of him. We really don't know. That's all speculation. Next up, we've got the Great Mouth, worshipped by the Figs. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Figs are a race of alien creatures. They've been seen throughout my paper computer games, and basically each Fig just hates its own existence or doesn't believe it's worthy of anything, even the simplest of good experiences. They'll immediately try to sacrifice themselves. That's what they do. But who do they sacrifice themselves to? The answer is the Great Mouth. The Great Mouth is an incredibly powerful being, and so far we know basically nothing about it. All that lore has yet to be revealed in my future paper computer games. All we know so far is that the Great Mouth is this immensely massive being, and he just consumes the Figs, and the Figs have just been programmed to sacrifice themselves to the Great Mouth immediately. So is the Great Mouth actually a god? Now this one has a decent chance of actually being one. But the thing is, I can't really put it in the god category because we just really don't know. We don't know what the nature of these beings are. Certainly it is worshipped by the Figs, and certainly there is something infinite, something beyond the normal physical level of reality about them, but we don't really know what it is, or if they truly are gods or just regular alien beings who have found a way to tap into some immense power or reality beyond their own. So, too early to say. I guess I'm gonna have to put that in the sorta category along with Godbot. So then we have, in Pierre's paper computer game, Genesis, which, once again, available on the PCG shop, we actually get a lot of references to God. Just, you know, the Judeo-Christian. I mean, it's a little bit ambiguous as to whether it's the same, you know, Judeo-Christian God that we're all familiar with, but it is pretty blatant in this game. Now, God actually plays a pretty significant role in the backstory of Genesis because this game actually takes place close to the beginning of time. And one of the characters, Castidas, she was actually the first woman created alongside Adam, the first man. And now in the story, the Epitaph of Sin, she recounts how like she sort of feels angry at God, thinking he's sort of torturing her, making her, wander eternally after she's been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So does this God really exist in the PCG universe? Well, playing these games, we never directly see the influence of God, so, I mean, I guess you could argue maybe not, but it's pretty clear that they do if you take the backstory as literal. Like, if you read the Epitaph of Sin, it says that, God created Adam, and, Castidas is sort of like the Lilith character. So we don't actually see this God, but his presence is pretty clear in the backstory. So from that, I'd have to conclude this God, it looks a whole lot like it exists, unless some other PCG comes out to contradict it. Okay, let me stop myself right there. I said in the beginning of this video that we were going to try and be detectives, and I don't think I was being a very good detective when I recorded this segment, because I've reread the Epitaph of Sin since I recorded this, and I don't think it's as clear as I was making it out to be. Now, the story of the Epitaph of Sin is told through the character of Castidas, but how much do we trust her, first of all? She only ever talks about the Garden of Eden indirectly. It's only revealed through dreams she has. And even when she does mention it, she never directly says, we were created by this God. Nothing like that. It's oblique references. So because, we in our culture, we know the story of Genesis from the Bible, we make assumptions, and I think that's what I was doing. But I don't think there's, based on, like, if you just take what she says alone, I don't think there's enough evidence in there to conclude anything. She doesn't even call him God or the creator. She just says he, him, and it's capitalized. We wouldn't know, that on its own is not enough evidence to conclude anything. Now, besides the statues, which were also built by Castidas, the only other evidence of the one God in the Soul Symphony games is in Genesis. You can find the story of night and day, and there's a couple of other stories that are also included in Genesis. And by the way, I actually forgot to include those when I uploaded Genesis to the PCG shop, so I've made a PDF of that, and I'll be uploading it now. So sorry about that, but I will be updating it with the extra stuff added. But anyway, those stories do directly reference God, but their canonicity is in doubt. Pierre has told me they're no longer canon, or at least, if they ever were completely canon, because they do sort of contradict some of what happens in the later PCGs. Like, for example, the character of Adam, like, it doesn't quite fit with what we learn in the second PCG Exile, which is the sequel to Genesis. So, I mean, those stories do exist in the PCG universe. Like, I mean, the book exists in the PCG universe, I mean. But just because somebody wrote down a book about a god does not necessarily mean that god exists. I mean, like, there people have written down stories about the Greek gods. That doesn't necessarily mean the Greek gods exist. So the existence of these books doesn't necessarily mean this god exists either. So, yeah, I don't think, if we're being detectives here, I don't think there's enough evidence to conclude this god exists. We just really don't know. I mean, it is suggested, hinted at, so, I mean, if I had to guess based on, Pierre's intentions, I'd say probably does exist, but there isn't enough evidence in the game itself and in the stories we have from it to conclude that it does exist, so I'm going to have to put this one in the don't know category. Next question, and the important one, did he create the PCG universe? And once again, from this game alone, from Genesis and from Exile, it certainly looks like he did. It's not explicitly said, so we can't know for sure, but we do know that Adam and Castidas were created by him, as well as the garden. So we know at least that much. So it does look an awful lot like this is the god that created the PCG universe. Sorry to get to the that conclusion so early in the video, but don't worry. There are deeper layers to this to be explored. So far, we've been looking at creator deities, but we've got some, straight up demons as well. Some of the more evil side of this coin. In our Halloween special episode in 2018, we were doing a PCG roundabout. Unfortunately, that part of the video didn't record, but Chris made a one-page PCG. It's called Escape from Psycho Ward, and in that game, Chris introduces a whole bunch of demons or just very powerful entities. Nothing is directly confirmed about their identity except for what they are. For example, we meet Chaos, and Chaos is the embodiment of all chaos in the universe. And that is pretty much that character's personality. And this game is just, you're trapped in a demon prison with these demons. Like, a prison to hold the most powerful evil entities in the PCG universe, but you're just a random person. You're not a demon, and you have to get out somehow. We see other entities like death and disease, and one of them, interestingly, is called Crispy Lucifer. So now, why is this person called Crispy Lucifer? Is this actually Lucifer? Is this the devil himself? Well, that's not made clear in the game. Since I played the game, if you try asking if he is actually the devil, you will get burned alive for asking that. There are hints that he might be, but if you inquire too directly, you will get burned alive. So we can't be sure about that. Now, for our purposes today, the question is, do these deities, these demons, these entities, whatever you want to call them, do they exist? Yes, absolutely, clearly yes. Are they gods? I'd say so. I mean, by any reasonable definition, they're unbelievably powerful. They're sort of like, some of them are like the embodiment of that entire concept in the universe. If that's not a god, I don't know what is. And I just want to add, the reason that I'm sort of accepting that on face value, that their power is what it says it is because we see their power in the game. We do see Chaos causing chaos among others just through her existence. So yeah, I think these guys are gonna have to go in the gods category. Now, did they create the PCG universe? Well, that we just don't know. We don't know if they have, I should say, any hand in creating the PCG universe. Next up, JPGS released a PCG that's just called The Gods. It's good for our purposes today, right? Thank you, JPGS, for giving me material for this video. But yeah, The Gods, it seems to be sort of a swamp survival style game. You have an island to explore, but there are powerful bosses, basically, that you have to fight. And they seem to be, the thing is, I downloaded this game on the PCG shop, but there isn't any information that comes with it, so this is all just me sort of speculating based on the images. And, I checked JPGS's channel and the PCG wiki. I couldn't find any more information about the gods, but definitely, we do see 4 bosses in the game. One is called Fire, one is called Water, and one, it doesn't have a name, but it's just in the water, and it seems like, I guess its name is just 3 hearts. And the most powerful one of them all seems to be Zovax. Now, Zovax is, I guess, this universe's version of Zuvak, but Zovax, unlike regular Zuvak, is, number 1, female, and number 2, a god. So, Zuvak is a god after all? Oh, so much for that. But, dude, this is an epic version of Zuvak. But here's the question, though. Are the gods in the gods really gods? Well, for one thing, it seems like you can fight them. I mean, they have health in the game, they have a level, you can attack them, so are they really gods if they can be defeated? But then again, I mean, you could argue sometimes the Greek gods can be fought, and it's not really clear to me if they really die if they are defeated, or if they're just, temporarily set back. That is sometimes, like in Greek mythology, Ares, like, he can be hurt, he can be wounded in war, but he doesn't die. He just, kind of goes back to recover himself for a while. So without more information, I can't rule one way or the other whether these are gods. So I'm going to have to put them in the sorta category for now, but with more information, I'm definitely open to changing that. Next, we've got one from one of my PCGs. This god is called Pekos. Pekos was worshipped by the ancient people of the planet Tree. In modern times, Pekos is all but forgotten, except that we do meet a cult that still worships Pekos in my game Descent. We don't really know much about Pekos except that he demands absolute loyalty from his followers. You have to be really true in your belief to him, or else you're rejected from the cult. Third are those who proclaim love for Pekos, but in their hearts betray. Hypocrites, whose actions show their disdain, shall be left, betrayed, to rot in their sin. The cult of Pekos that we see in the game does perform sacrifices, but that is also for a practical purpose, as you see later in the game. I don't want to spoil anything. So, all we know is that Pekos was worshipped by the people on the planet Shri. We don't know if Pekos ever actually existed. We have no knowledge about that one way or another. If he existed, we don't know how powerful he was, or if he was really a god or some sort of false god. We just can't know any of that. And we definitely don't know if he played any hand in the creation of the universe, or even just a planet, so we're just going to put that in the don't know bin for now. Next up, we've got the gods of Saluna, Koraway, and Azrael. Now, Saluna is an alternate universe, sort of like an alternate version of the Earth if its history had gone vastly different. Also, it's not exactly like the Earth. The geography is pretty different. On Saluna, there are three main gods worshipped. One of them is called Saluna. Now, according to her believers, and there are multiple races who worship Saluna, Saluna is supposed to be a kind goddess, a loving goddess, but also a very sad goddess, because Saluna is said to have created the world because she was born into an empty void, and it was because of her loneliness and her sadness she started crying, and it was her tears that fell into the world and created the world and all of the races that populate it. And after that, the goddess flew away and hasn't been seen ever since. Seen in the paper and pencil RPG Saluna by Pierre, it's loosely connected to the PCG multiverse, so it is part of the PCG multiverse. That's the story believed by her followers, but did it really happen? How much of that is actually true? Before I answer that question, though, I want to move on to the story of the next god of Saluna, Koraway. Koraway is the dragon god. He's believed in by the dragons who ruled Saluna 500,000 years ago, and by the Rith, who are sort of humanoid descendants of the dragons, and they still live on Saluna today. Now, it's believed that Koraway is the father of all the dragons, that they're all his children. And Koraway is a dragon god so powerful, he could destroy entire planets with his breath. Just like normal dragons hoard gold and jewels, Koraway hoards the stars themselves. His egg that he was born out of was said to be a molten planet, and when he was born, the shell of his egg burst, sending pieces of his shell down to Saluna. So, if he actually exists, Koraway would be one of the most powerful deities in the PCG multiverse. This is an unbelievably powerful dragon god hatched out of a planet itself, able to destroy planets on a whim, coming and going as he pleases, hoarding entire star systems. But is it true? Well, during the course of the Soluna tabletop RPG game, which we find out that Soluna did exist in a form, but as sort of a large meteorite. This is based on the giant impact theory. The giant impact theory is a real scientific theory about how our moon might have formed. See, it's believed, and this is actually the currently accepted scientific theory. It may not be true, we're not sure yet, but there's a really good chance, it's very likely. A large planetesimal, like a small planet, may have crashed into the early Earth, smashing it so hard that a lot of material from the Earth and from, mixed material from the Earth and from this planetesimal might have shot off into space and formed into the moon. Now, essentially the same thing seems to have happened on Soluna, but in this case, the difference is that planetesimal which smashed into the planet was a sentient being. Now, that in itself is pretty incredible. This is an intelligence beyond any we've ever encountered. It's massive. It is extremely powerful. How powerful? We don't exactly know. We do know is that it crashed into the planet that would become Soluna. Material was sent up into space, which would become the moon of Soluna, but that moon is dead. It doesn't maintain any of the consciousness. But shards of the original body were sent down to the planet. It turns out that these shards fell down to the Earth, creating extremely powerful magical stones, which are coveted across Soluna. Now, here's the secret, right? This meteorite is actually the basis for the myth of both Soluna and Korway. That's why I waited till now to tell you if either of them were true. They're both based on this original meteorite story. There is no humanoid goddess named Soluna. There is no dragon god Korway. Both are coming from the primitive peoples of this planet, not understanding what they saw in the sky. An incredibly powerful light smashing into their planet and raining down shards on the ground. Some peoples, the humans, interpreted those shards raining down as tears from a goddess. The dragons understood that as pieces of the shell of their dragon god Korway. But it's the same thing. The same event happened, interpreted in different ways by different people. One of those shards actually became sentient, an extremely powerful being, a person walking around Soluna, trying for millennia to bring all the stones together to reunite Soluna, the original planetesimal body, asteroid, whatever you want to call it, to bring together that intelligence once again so they can be what they were. So is this being, this Soluna, Korway, this planetesimal asteroid, whatever you want to call it, is it a god? Well, that brings us back to our question of what is a god. I mean, this is a powerful being. It is a sentient being. It is worshipped by people as a god. But it's not exactly the goddess that people believe it to be. So it is a little bit complicated, right? I don't honestly really know what to do with this one. But I can't say it's completely not a god, because this is a very powerful being. That is true. And so, I think I just have no choice but to put this into the sorta category. I'll get to the third god of Soluna, don't worry, but we're going to cover some other stuff first. Next, we've got Azinu and Nervina. Now, Azinu and Nervina, I'm going to confess to you guys, this was one of the hardest ones to categorize, because these guys are robot keepers of all deceased robots. Now, when a robot dies, if they're not revived, they're probably going to be transferred to either Nervina's dimension or Azinu's dimension. Now, Nervina is the keeper of good robots, whereas, if you're bad, they go to Azinu's dimension. Now, I should note, Xenu is not an evil character like you would assume. He's actually, like, Xenu and Nervina actually work together. They're just keeping robots in the correct dimension, that's all. Now, what makes this complicated is that these two beings seem to be robots themselves just by looking at them. Secondly, for a robot to be transferred to their dimension when the robot dies, they have to be transferred digitally. Bear in mind, these two characters have never actually appeared in a PCG, so there's a lot about this we can't know at all. These are concepts that appeared on Sea-Dog's Instagram back in the day when he was called Poor Gamer Nation. So we don't know if any of these details might change if we actually ever see these in a PCG. So whatever I say here, take this with a grain of salt. So it's not exactly like a divine thing, right? Like, it's not like if you die, you just ascend to the heavens or whatever. This is a digital, which is a very physical, real world kind of thing, right? So is that really a god if they're just digitally transferring robots into a physical dimension? I mean, that gets a little tricky. On the other hand, if all robots throughout the universe are being transferred to this place after they die, and it is an afterlife, how can you really say that's not, a god? How do you say that's not an afterlife? It is. It's also even mentioned that sometimes if they can't be transferred digitally, that an electrician or technician will have to save them and send them over to one of Xenu or Nervina's dimension. So this looks like a pretty physical process. I mean, and if you think about it, transferring a robot's consciousness, which is already digital, transferring it digitally somewhere else, that just makes sense. That's pretty ordinary. I mean, I think, if we build robots today and, to what extent they have AI, we could just transfer their consciousness out of their body if the body breaks and into a different body. So this gets into some weird territory, how do I even categorize this? So yeah, I don't see what choice I have but to put this one in the gods category. I'm going to quickly go through a few alien gods. The Triptosians believe in a god called Kairagej. We don't know if this one exists. I'm going to cut right to the chase. We don't know much about this at all. The only evidence we see of this is this depiction of Gurgis the Great, the founder of Triptosian civilization, meeting his god Kairagej at the surface of the water, because Triptosians are an aquatic species. But my intention in drawing this was that this was a particular time of day, an optical illusion happened, and what he's really seeing is sort of a distorted reflection of himself in the surface of the water. So we don't know if this god really exists or not. I'm going to put that one in the don't know category. Next, we've got Zuhager, Zagahager, and Duyahageru. These appear in Balzac Lobotron, but they don't actually appear. We only find an alien book that tells the story of how they fought over each other. These are gods worshipped by the flying saucer aliens. I haven't come up with a name for that race yet, but it's basically the PCG version of, the Greys, the aliens that, abduct people, supposedly. We haven't seen any evidence of them one way or another beyond this story, but they do look pretty cool, right? So, yeah, we just don't know if they exist or not. Don't know category. Then there's Azraphel of Saluna. Azraphel is interesting. He's a god of the deep. He's not said to have created the world, so he might not be part of that same creation event that caused the stories of Saluna and Koroway. Azraphel is depicted as a formless creature seen only by the Merfair, and interestingly, the Merfair are telepathic and they sort of have a collective unconscious or consciousness. So the Merfair say they still hear the echoes of his slumbering thoughts in their minds. Now, does he really exist? We don't know. We can't know that. There is no clear evidence that I'm aware of, so I'm just going to go right ahead and put him in the don't know category, but it's very possible that, a race with a collective consciousness, it is possible that a piece of all of their mind, little pieces of their mind can since they're all connected to each other, they might connect in unexpected ways to form a larger consciousness. It's possible that Azrael is nothing but the collective consciousness of the Merfair people linked together. That would explain why the Merfair still feel echoes of him, and that he's slumbering, because right now the Merfair are acting individually. They're having their individual thoughts rather than primarily functioning as a collective consciousness. Of course, once again, that is completely speculation. That isn't said in the game, that isn't said in any of the lore. That's just my personal speculation, so take that with a grain of salt. So for now, we are just going to have to put that in the don't know category, firmly in the don't know category. And finally, we come to the last gods on our list. This is Crokinau and Mythar of the Antempus universe. Now, for those of you not in the know, the Antempus universe, this story is created by Compek Dev. You can read his original story. It's called The Crokinau Theory, and it's on the PCG Wiki. Now, this hasn't appeared yet in a paper computer game. There is a planned game about Crokinau, but it's not out yet. So, once again, the details of this story are subject to change when the actual PCG comes out. But for now, we're going to rely on the PCG Wiki stories, as well as Compek Dev's explainer on the Antempus universe, which is really good, by the way. You guys should definitely check all of that out. Now, Crokinau and Mythar are two beings who existed before not only the universe, but the entire PCG multiverse as a whole. And, if the story is correct, they created it. So here we are, folks. We have finally arrived after going through deity after deity and finding not a single one of them that definitely created the universe. If this story is accurate, we have finally found what we are looking for. There's a lot we don't know about this story. We don't know how true this is. According to his story, this is a theory arrived at by Cavern Science after finding an entire planet with Crokinau's name all over it, written in the Latin alphabet. That is some pretty interesting evidence, to say the least. Crokinau and Mythar exist in the Antempus universe when there was no time, and reality had a different meaning than it does today. Crokinau traveled a long distance across the Antempus universe to reach Mythar, where he gave him the idea that they should create a multiverse. And there was some rush to this because their Antempus universe was shrinking, and it was shrinking fast. The new multiverse they created was the PCG multiverse as a whole. All the universes that all the paper computer games take place in, all of it was all created by Mythar and Crokinau. Although things didn't go smoothly, because during the creation of this multiverse, Mythar did something which they had both agreed they would never do. He added evil to the multiverse. Now, why would he do that? I don't know. That story is going to have to be told in future paper computer games. But what we do know is that Crokinau kicked him out of the Antempus universe and rebuilt the PCG multiverse using Crokinau particles. Now, is this true? Again, we really don't know. However, this has a good chance of being true. This was researched by Cavern Science and released as a scientific paper by Cavern Science in the PCG universe. So the fact that a scientific organization was able to do a study and release a scientific paper, well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but it does add a lot of credence to this. Of course, science is a little bit more complicated than that. There can be weird, biased scientific organizations, and just because they release a paper doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But still, a scientific paper is something, and it's based on particles which have been observed, the Crokinau particles. Plus, like I said, there is a PCG coming out about one of the adventures of Crokinau, so once that comes out, that'll just canonically confirm it. So, you know, assuming it ever gets made. So, I guess, hesitantly and tentatively, until we get more evidence, I am going to put this in the gods category. Which brings us to our final step. So what do we know? In the PCG Universe, we've got, for sure, beings like death, disease, chaos, etc. Like the demons in the demon prison, embodiments of basic concepts. Above that, we may or may not have a supreme deity who created the universe and controls all of that. In Soluna, we've got an asteroid which didn't create the universe, it's just a very powerful being. That's called Soluna. And we may or may, so I'll put this little squiggly for maybe. And we may or may not have Azrael, a being of the Merfair's consciousness. Also in the PCG universe, we've got Azinu and Nervina, gods of the robots, caretakers of dead, good, and bad robots. And above all of it, we have the PCG multiverse created by Crokinau and Mithra. They are both from the Antempus universe. But who created the Antempus universe? That's a story for another video. Most of the other deities discussed so far in this video have been also in the PCG universe. I'll make little dots to represent them, but the thing is that most of them don't have enough evidence to be counted as gods, or some just aren't gods straight up, like Zuvak. There is, of course, another universe where the gods takes place. We don't know that's another universe, but it seems to be, since it has an alternate version of Zuvak. That's a guess I'm making. So this is a simple diagram I made of the gods in different universes. There's a lot of speculation involved. There's a lot we don't know. Hopefully, as we go on, this diagram will get more filled in. Now, there's a few scenarios I could imagine. You know, for example, what if this god actually is above Crokinau and Mithra and created the whole multiverse? Or what if, you know, he's only the god of this universe? We don't know. And we don't know if he exists at all, because as I said earlier in the video, there isn't a whole lot of direct evidence of that. It's very possible that every universe has its own gods, but then above all of it, there's Crokinau and Mithra. But then there may be higher beings even above them. Don't think of this map as the be-all, end-all of the PCG universe. This is a beginning. This is a conversation starter. I don't want to think of this as this is what it is. This is just my early speculations, that the best I could come up with, but this is going to get filled in with a lot more definite information as the PCG multiverse grows, and we learn more about what deities do and don't exist. So, yeah. But wait a second, though. I said in the beginning we'd sort it all out, which gods exist and which gods don't. But throughout this whole video, I haven't put a single god in the doesn't exist category. What am I doing wrong? This whole video is wrong. Trollzak, what are you doing here? Ruining your life, as always. Not that you need me to. You seem to be messing it up all on your own. This video, for instance. Why are you putting these gods into buckets? We're sorting it out. We're trying to figure out which gods are... Good joke. You can't just decide what's a god and what's not a god. Why not? because God is a meaningless term. That's not true. Oh, really? Tell me then, when exactly does a god become a god? At what level of power? Oh, come on. You know I can't point to an exact cutoff for how much power makes a god a god. Exactly. You can't. And that's what's stupid about this. You're just lazily throwing everything with power into the sorta category because there's no way for you to sort out whether it's a god or not. Because there's no actual definition of God. Of course there is. A god is a powerful being that... Is Superman a god? Well, no, not exactly. Why not? You just put Tutorial Bot into the sorta bucket because he has a lot of power. Isn't that the same thing? Well, no, that's different. It's because he's Godbot. He has God in the name. You're biased by a name. And you put Soluna and the Great Mouth into the sorta category too. How are they sorta gods? What aspect of them exactly is divine? Well, look, is it really wrong to say that beings that powerful who are worshipped, what does worship have to do with it? If you worshipped me, would that make me a god? Well, no, but... Aha! So you admit worship shouldn't have anything to do with it. You're telling me Superman isn't a god, even though he has great power, but the Great Mouth sorta is. And the only difference between them is one is worshipped as a god and one isn't. Don't listen to that guy, dude. Believe. Believe, Zach. Not you too. I'm trying to make a video. Why is everyone coming in here? Yeah, get out of here. You're ruining Zach's utter humiliation. Oh, rubbish. Don't listen to him, dude. You're right to call those gods gods because that's what they are. This guy wants to play with words and gaslight you into believing nothing is what it is anymore. Oh yeah, which one of us really plays with words here? You really want to get into that? Look, belief is exactly what makes them gods. What does it mean to call something a god except to say that it is so transcendent, so beyond our understanding as to inspire your devotion, your utter devotion and belief? So you're saying that worship is what makes a god a god? Exactly. The Great Mouth is a god because it so transcends the understanding of the figs that they're willing to sacrifice themselves out of devotion. Zovax is a goddess because she's probably called such by the people of the world she's from. Oh, come on. So you're telling me, because Zach worships me, because I'm so unimaginably superior to him that I transcend his understanding, that makes me a god? If he worships you as a god, yes, who's to say you're not a god of a sort? This is starting to make sense to me. Keep talking. Okay, wait a second. That sort of makes sense to me, but it can't be completely right. I mean, the figs, for example, they probably worship the Great Mouth because they're brainwashed in some form. It literally eats them. If we called it a god, wouldn't that be justifying its cruel power over them? Wouldn't we be helping enslave them? And also all sorts of other cults all around the world and the universe. That doesn't seem right. Also, pretty sure he's not a god in any universe. You just gotta have an open mind, dude. Look, we can see it either way, depending on how we define the word God. God is a word that different people might have slightly different definitions for. So what we've been doing this whole video is basically starting from that word, God, and trying to see if there's anything we can label with it. But I think a better way to look at it is to put the word aside and look at what the reality is. if you ask, are there gods in PCGs, you get bogged down in questions of what counts as a god. And by some definitions, almost anything applies. And by other definitions, almost nothing does. Maybe it's better to ask, are there supremely powerful beings? Did any of them create the universe? Do any of them control parts of the universe at a fundamental level, like the laws of physics themselves? Those are questions I think that can be answered. And I think as much as we can do it, we've done that in this video. We've seen beings who are so powerful that we're insignificant dust to them. We've seen beings who are the embodiments of chaos, disease, and so much more. We've seen beings who have created entire universes, even multiverses. But we've also seen beliefs in gods that weren't what they seemed at first. Some that were misinterpreted, some that were very powerful at varying levels, but maybe not your traditional idea of gods, and everything in between. That's the reality of the PCG universe, is that there's this whole hierarchy of beings, of beliefs that are false, beliefs that are real, or beliefs that are just something else misinterpreted from what it really is. It's a whole complicated hierarchy of different gods and beliefs, and it's an interesting universe full of different ideas to explore. And that's what's cool about this. So short answer, are there gods in the PCG universe? Yes, there are. But not every god in the PCG universe is really a god. They're not all really what they seem. And hey, maybe we should look at them for what they are instead of focusing on whether they meet the definition of the word god. There are powerful beings. That's the important part of this. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching, and PCG you later.